us tonight, tower blocks are home to thousands of people here in the West Midlands. But just how safe are they? Millions of pounds have been spent updating them, many of which were built in the 50s and 60s. But an inside-out investigation has revealed major concerns about the safety of high-rises if a fire breaks out. They punctuate the West Midlands skyline. Tower blocks, some over 50 years old, and they've had millions of taxpayers' money spent on them. But Inside Out has uncovered major problems affecting thousands of people.
People's lives are put at risk. That is a huge problem that needs looking into urgently.
Our 6-month investigation has uncovered systemic failings in high-rise fire safety. It's a big cost though, isn't it?
It is a big cost, but what's the value of a life?
We need a public inquiry to look at the systemic failure, and they should do so urgently.
New and quick methods have been used to overtake the backlog, with the result that a 13-storey building was put up in only 18 weeks.
Built in the 1950s and 60s, this high-density housing was favoured by local authorities as a quick fix to a big housing shortage. Effectively, they were concrete boxes with steel windows, making it difficult for fire to spread. But that was then. 50 years on, and many have become outdated, run down and in a state of disrepair. Which means local authorities are faced with a choice: pull them down or do them up to make them more environmentally friendly, under a government scheme called Decent Homes, a slightly cheaper option than rebuilding and rehousing. But this architect thinks that doing up some tower blocks is throwing good money after bad.
I have colleagues who would argue that anything built in the 60s should be pulled down and they should be built up to zero carbon standards. So in the long run, we are saving money.
But is saving money costing lives? Back in 2009, fire spread through this London tower block. 6 people died. It had been refurbished under the Decent Homes programme. This solicitor represents the victims.
There is very credible expert evidence in the Lakanal House fire case that the renovation works did not comply with fire safety, and that's why people 2 floors above where the fire broke out lost their lives after being told by the fire service that they would be safe.
In fact, we discovered that last year the government became so worried about fire safety in high-rise blocks, it wrote to all local authorities requesting fire safety checks on all high-rises, making particular reference to the refurbishment programme Decent Homes. So, is there a problem in the West Midlands? We decided to go and see for ourselves. This high-rise in Coventry has had over £1 million spent on it under the Decent Homes programme. We carried out an inspection with this experienced fire surveyor.
Straight away, let's have a look at this hose.
First stop, fire extinguishers.
I mean, it doesn't look as though it's been touched
They
for a
weren't good
while.
at the time, no. Take, for example, this fire door. That is not fire rated, it's been smashed up. I can see the light through from inside.
Yeah, there's a massive gap in
There's
there.
a massive gap. There is an actual stop valve there with no head on it, if you're looking around there. So if that's been turned off, it won't work at all.
Right. So next to useless.
That's not fire resistant, you've got big gaps. That should be properly ducted and held away. Somebody's been trying to tape it up. Where's the fire exit?
There was no immediate risk of fire, but there were breaches in fire safety legislation. Whitefriars Housing didn't want to be interviewed, but told us in a statement,
"Our customers' safety is our chief concern. We have conducted in-depth fire risk assessments 3 times in the past year. We're satisfied that these blocks meet appropriate safety levels. In each case, the assessments, with the fire service in attendance, identified that there are no significant fire safety concerns with these blocks. As is always the case, there will be ongoing repair requirements, which we will continue to deal with as and when they occur."
Across the West Midlands, well over £100 million has been spent on refurbishing high-rise blocks. Most of that money has been spent on making them more environmentally friendly, and fire safety seems to have taken a back seat. Birmingham City Council refurbished this high-rise at a cost of £4.7 million under the Decent Homes programme, working out at roughly £40,000 per flat. Arnold discovered that in the event of a fire, every fire screen in the common parts of the block would fail and allow a fire to spread.
The people who carried out the work should have fire protected it. You know, they can't leave it in a worse condition than the building was originally intended to be. So, fire protection breached.
But that hasn't stopped Birmingham City Council from handing out bills for some of the work. This resident bought his flat under right to buy. He was handed a bill for over £16,000.
It's a very large bill for people that, like I said, are in the 70s, 80s and 90s. And I don't know if they've got that money. And how do you find that money? Do they go to the relatives? If they're not on benefits and they've saved a bit of money themselves or they're getting a pension, where do you find 16,000 from in one go?
And one word summed up how he felt about the fire safety issue.
It's scandalous, in my opinion.
So what is going wrong? The Association of Chief Fire Officers acknowledged there is a problem with high-rise blocks.
There are issues at the moment with high-rise buildings that are being addressed. It'll take time because it is an expensive remedial programme that will have to fund, which in this time is obviously difficult. They had a programme of inspection, as all housing authorities do with all of their properties, but obviously they had to prioritise, and this is Lakanal House forced them to reprioritise their activities.
In fact, the initial findings in a report into the Lakanal House fire highlighted fire safety issues in the Decent Homes programme. The Decent Homes programme, has that made flats like this more or less safe to live in?
I'd say they've made them less safe. There's nothing within Decent Homes to make the properties fire safe.
One problem is tinkering with the fabric of old buildings. Old high-rise blocks were built out of concrete and fitted with steel windows. Under Decent Homes, many of these windows have been replaced with UPVC. So, which is the most fire-resistant, steel or plastic?
In a fire risk, steel.
No question.
No question about it.
And Inside Out discovered that despite being energy efficient, there has been no fully independent fire resistance testing ever carried out on UPVC. And there is no law which requires a minimum standard of fire resistance on external windows on high-rise blocks.
I think there's a fear that renovation works were carried out on council blocks, and people, of course, were thinking of making the environment better and safer for people, but particularly in tower blocks where people may be living sort of, 12 floors above, people just didn't pay attention to the necessity to have proper fire protection and comply with fire regulations.
And those fire regulations affect thousands of people in the West Midlands. But here in Birmingham, Inside Out has made another astonishing discovery. We can exclusively reveal the majority of Birmingham's 224 tower blocks are in need of fire safety remedial work, despite the millions already spent. And most worrying, the councillor responsible for housing in Birmingham seems a bit confused about a number of issues.
We have 64 flats in the city of Birmingham, and we have done 54 of them up to the new fire regulations, and the rest, I'm proud to say, will be completed before the end of this financial year. I think that's a success.
In fact, the council later confirmed Birmingham does actually have 224 tower blocks, not 64, and the majority still need fire safety remedial work carrying out. What about fire doors?
The improvements that we're making is even better than the regulations with the Secure by Design door. I mean, those doors will guarantee 10 minutes fire resistance. There's no other door that can do that.
Wrong again. Fire safety legislation actually requires 30-minute fire doors, not 10, but Birmingham does meet those standards. So how much has been spent on fire safety remedial work?
The right fire standard and the improvements and conforming to legislation is over £300 million. That's a considerable amount of money.
Once again, wrong. Birmingham has actually spent just £30 million on fire safety remedial work since 2007, not the £300 million claimed by Councillor Lyons. The government didn't want to be interviewed about decent homes, but told us in a statement,
Fire safety in high-rise buildings is a matter of great concern to the thousands of people who live in them, and the government takes this issue very seriously. The Decent Homes programme has improved the quality and safety of social housing by requiring that homes should be free from serious health and safety hazards, including fire.
6 people lost their lives in the Lakanal fire. And whilst fires of this nature are extremely rare, there is a big question mark over fire safety in old high-rise blocks.
If there is a systemic failing in council housing throughout the country or in tower blocks where people's lives are being put at risk now, and we know how many people died in the tragic fire in Lakanal House, including young children, then an inquest in 2-3 years' time into Lakanal House is just not enough. We need a public inquiry to look at the systemic failure, and they should do so urgently.